The rain that night fell in thin, silver sheets, tracing the tall glass of James's office window. The city glowed faintly beyond, neon lights blurring into colorless streaks. Inside, silence pressed against him. The cursor on his laptop blinked, waiting for words that would not come. Just months earlier, he had been unstoppable, the young CEO whose name investors spoke with awe. His company was the rising star of the tech world, his charm magnetic, his vision clear. But tonight, his phone was silent, his inbox empty. Every contract had dissolved, every investor had vanished, and every partner who once shook his hand with admiration had quietly disappeared. His father's voice still echoed in his ears, sharp, cold, and final. "You've failed this family, James. We trusted you. You ruined everything." Those words hit harder than any financial loss. The man who once called him son had spoken now as a judge delivering a sentence. As James left the tower that bore his name, the rain turned merciless. It struck his face, soaked his suit, and washed away what little pride he had left. He passed the crowds, umbrellas open, faces indifferent. No one cared that the man stumbling through the storm was once worth millions. That night, the city did not remember him. And perhaps, he thought bitterly, it never really had. At home, Too Deep waited. The room was small, its single lamp casting a soft golden pool on the floor. She heard the door open, heard his wet shoes against the tile. She said nothing. She only walked toward him, draped a towel around his shoulders, and whispered. "You still have me, James. That hasn't changed." Her words broke something inside him, not his strength, but the wall around his heart. For the first time, he understood love not as comfort, but as rescue. She wasn't dressed in silk. Her hands were rough from long hours at work. But her eyes, steady, luminous, carried a kind of courage no wealth could buy. When he finally cried, she held him. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, it washed them clean. "Storms don't last forever," she murmured. "They only wash away what no longer belongs." In that fragile silence, James realized that the golden doors of his old world had closed, only so that life could open another one, quieter, truer. Dawn crept softly through the curtains. The sound of rain had faded, replaced by the chirping of sparrows. Too Deep stood in the kitchen, her hands moving with a rhythm as natural as breath. The smell of porridge filled the air. "Eat," she said gently, placing a bowl in front of him. "You can't rebuild on an empty stomach," he smiled faintly. "Rebuild? Everything's gone, Deep." The company, my father's trust, everything. Then we start small, she replied. A seed doesn't become a tree in one day. Her calm confidence wrapped around him like sunlight after a storm. Later that morning, they packed what little they owned into an old pickup truck and left the city. The skyline faded behind them, glass and steel giving way to green and sky. By the river, Diep pointed to a patch of land. We can rent this. The soil looks good, he blinked. You mean farming? She laughed. Why not? The world took your title, not your hands, and so it began, not with contracts or capital, but with 2 sets of calloused hands and a faith that didn't require evidence. The first days were brutal. The tools were heavy, the sun unforgiving. James's palms blistered. The man who once dictated boardroom strategy now struggled to dig a trench straight. Yet each night, when they sat together under the wide country sky, he felt something unfamiliar: peace. Weeks turned to months. The soil began to yield. Their small patch of green grew strong and orderly. James learned to read the earth, the way it spoke through moisture and scent. When the first harvest came, Diep held up a basket of cucumbers, her laughter ringing like bells. Look, James. We did it. He looked at her, pride softening his eyes. No, Diep, you did it. You believed when I didn't. They sold their vegetables at the village market. People noticed. Word spread. Their produce was fresh, organic, and full of care. Within months, their tiny farm became a modest local success. James began sketching new ideas: irrigation systems, eco-greenhouses. It wasn't a million-dollar empire, but it was his. Built from soil, sweat, and love. One evening, as the sky burned orange, a black car appeared at the edge of the farm road. From it stepped a man James hadn't seen in months, his father. He looked older, the lines on his face carved deep with regret. James, he said quietly, I've heard what you and Diep built here. The city needs people like you. I was wrong to let you go. Diep stood beside James, her hand finding his. The gesture was small, but it steadied him. Father, James said after a long pause, I'm not the man who begged to stay in your company. I failed because I chased numbers, not purpose. Here, I found what truly matters. His father nodded slowly. Then perhaps you can bring that purpose back. We need new leadership. Someone who understands both people and profit. Will you return? James hesitated. The life they'd built was humble, yet sacred. To go back meant risking its peace. Diep smiled gently. Maybe it's time, James. We can build both, a life and a dream. Just promise me you won't lose yourself again. He took her hand. I promise. When James walked back into the city, everything looked different. The same skyscrapers that once made him feel powerful now felt cold and small. In the company lobby, whispers followed him. Wasn't that the man who lost everything? But the quiet steadiness in his eyes silenced their doubt. At the board meeting, his father introduced him proudly. This is my son, James. He will lead our new sustainable farming division. A few executives exchanged smirks. James noticed, but didn't flinch. I understand failure, he began. I know what it's like to lose everything you thought defined you. But I also know what it means to rebuild, not with capital, but with conviction. If we don't evolve, all this wealth means nothing. The room fell silent. His father watched him, not as a disappointment, but as a man reborn. Months later, the new division flourished. Their sustainable agriculture project revived the company's image and created jobs for hundreds of rural families. James and Diep often returned to the village, where the river still sang the same gentle song. Their daughter, little Nhi, ran among the rows of green, laughter echoing through the fields. You see, Diep, James said, watching her, when all the million-dollar doors closed, love opened the right one. She smiled. And that door will never close again. They stood together as the sun dipped below the horizon, light spilling across the golden crops. It was not wealth that glowed there, but gratitude. For James, the journey had been more than survival, it was transformation. He had learned that the world measures success in zeros, but life measures it in moments of grace. He had lost everything the world values: power, prestige, inheritance. And yet, in that loss, he found something far rarer: meaning. Too deep had been his anchor, his reminder that love, when patient and enduring, is the most powerful currency of all. She never asked him to become the man he once was. She simply stood beside the man he was becoming. Their story whispered a truth the world often forgets. Failure isn't the opposite of success, it's part of it. James had to lose his empire to learn how to build something lasting: peace, compassion, and purpose. Together, they discovered that sometimes life tears everything down so that we can build what actually matters. Love, after all, doesn't shine beneath chandeliers. It grows under the rain, blooms in the mud, and glows brightest in the dark. So when the world shuts its golden gates on you, don't despair. Maybe it's only guiding you toward the door that truly matters, the one love is waiting to open.